What's up, guys? This is Jake Garay. I'm here with Vinny Martin, and this is episode number 8 of RealtyCheck. Today we're going to be talking about how to determine the value of a rental property, or essentially, and another way of putting it is how to determine what you should pay when purchasing a rental property, because they're basically synonymous. Okay, so this is probably the most important thing, because as you guys know, in real estate, you don't make the money on the sell side, you make the money on the buy side, meaning you make your money when you go in. You know, it really is basic entrepreneurship and business 101. You want to buy low and sell high. So the purchase price is really going to determine whether or not this is a good investment, because everything, especially in real estate, when a loan is taken out against a property, which is going to determine your monthly payments, which is going to determine your monthly cash flow, your purchase price is everything. So today we're going to make this pretty short and sweet. We're going to focus it around one key indicator, the thing that Vinny and I both agreed, and he already beat me to it, is the most important, calculation that you can make when looking at an investment property, and that is your capitalization rate, or your cap rate for short. Okay, so this is the key indicator that's going to tell you what you should purchase for the property, or if what it's listed for or what it's currently for sale for is too high, or if it's a great deal. Okay, now this is important to keep in mind as well. Every single area, no matter where you are, is a little bit different. So, for example, in New York, if you find a property around here where you can find something with, say, a 10% cap rate, right? That's what we look for, is like, okay, if it's a 10% cap rate, that's a pretty good return. That's something that's worth investing. If you go less than 10%, we get into the 8 or the 9 range, and you purchase with a loan, meaning you don't purchase all cash, and purchasing a rental property all cash is a completely different conversation, because then obviously it's a little bit different, but point being is, with something that's less than an 8% cap rate, you start to realize that all you're going to be able to do is really build equity in the property. You're not going to be cash flow positive. And I know for me, and especially for Vinny, and in residential real estate, we're looking to be, positive cash flow. We don't want to be walking away just paying the mortgage and building equity, because then, you're one disaster away from losing that property. So what we're going to do is we're going to run with you a hypothetical situation, and Vin's going to kind of jump in at certain points and just throw in his 2 cents on what you can see and kind of how you can determine a cap rate. So your capitalization rate is going to simply be, and you're going to need a couple key indicators first. You're going to need to know the total income of the property on an annual level. So you say you have a property that makes, we'll try to keep it pretty round with the numbers here. Say $5,000 a month. So maybe you have 5 apartments that make $5,000 a month, so $5,000 a month. You multiply that by 12, you have $60,000. Let's say after your taxes, your maintenance fees, your property management fees, go ahead and do that. So total income is going to be $60,000. And I'll kind of let Vinny throw these numbers on the board so you can visually see them. Total expenses, not including your mortgage. So this does not include your loan payments every single month. So we're looking at, say, taxes. We're looking at, snow removal. We're looking at property management. You have to keep in mind things like maintenance. You have to keep in mind things that might not be so obvious all the time. For example, vacancy. Some people will ask, okay, if I'm purchasing a property, what's the vacancy rate like here? Is it 3%? Is it 5%? And then what you'll do is, let's say you have a building that, for example, in a 20-unit building, if one, unit becomes available every single year, that's about a 5%, because 1 divided by 20 is 5% vacancy rate. So you want to have a good feel on what that is, because then what you're going to do is take 5% of the total income and put that into the total expenses. So 5% of $60,000, and I'm doing the math off the top of my head, is I think roughly $3,000, if I'm doing that math correctly. So, is that right? I just want to check the math. 5% of $60,000, we don't have a calculator offhand, so I'm going to keep talking, but simply, Vinny runs my math just because I want to be sure for the sake of the video. Right, so you have a $3,000 vacancy allowance that goes into that expense because you're planning ahead for a 3% or a 5%, whatever it may be, vacancy rate. So all the expenses, you know, snow removal, maintenance, vacancy, all those things go into total expenses, taxes, not your loan though. We want to really emphasize that.
Are we talking insurance too though?
Insurance as well. All those different things go into your total expenses. So let's say your total expenses are, $15,000 for the sake of even numbers. So $15,000 is your total expenses. So your NOI, your net operating income, will be $45,000. That's a simple
So let me throw this right here.
calculation.
Net operating income.
NOI is going to be $45,000. Sorry, I was looking at the 15,000. So now that you have it's expenses deducted from the income. Now that you have the NOI, and this is really simple stuff. It's going to seem kind of ridiculous that it's this easy to determine. And this is just a quick glance. There's other things that you have to take into account, and we'll kind of go into those at the end. But at this quick glance, off the top of my head, I can say, okay, NOI, $45,000 a year, 10% cap rate is going to be that times 10, if that makes sense. Because essentially what you're doing is you're taking what you would put as, so let's say, $450,000, if you want to write $450,000 on the board, right? Because your cap rate is going to be what you pay for the property. So $450,000, right? So what you pay for the property is going to be determined on what your NOI is. So you divide your NOI by what you pay for the property. So we're going to
throw this in there.
No, put the 45 on top.
Basic math here. We're learning.
Simple division. Cross this out so you can have a better idea. So $45,000 divided by $450,000 will give you 0.1. As a percentage, 10%. If this building had, say, an NOI of 30,000, right? If we did 30,000, just for the sake of the calculation, divided by 450,000, excuse me, then you times it by 100, you're at a 6.66% cap rate. So, simply put, cap rate can be defined as your NOI, your net operating income, divided by your purchase price. Now you see how in an equation, simple algebra will tell you if this is X and you know what you want your cap rate to be, you can then determine what you want as your purchase price. So for me, wanting 10%, this is 10%, 45,000 times 10 equals 450. If this was 50,000, I'd pay 500,000. And obviously, like I said, there's a little bit of wiggle room there now. There's a couple scenarios where this might become a little bit blurry. With commercial property or even with investment property, you have what's called a pro forma. Okay, your pro forma is going to be what if everything was run 100% efficient and all your numbers were exactly right on. That's what the potential of the building is. So say you have a 15-unit building and 10 of them are occupied and 5 of them are vacant. An agent is going to give you a pro forma saying this is what the property would make if all 15 were rented. You want to base your calculations on the actual, not on the pro forma. Simply because, yes, it's great to be somewhere in between that. Maybe you say, okay, the pro forma has this valued at 600 and the actual has a value to 500, then I can, feel good in saying that I could purchase this price somewhere in the middle, say 550,000. Because you know that the actual might be a little bit lower, but the potential is a little bit higher. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The second thing to keep in mind is when you purchase a property, you need, if you're gonna buy it with a loan, the property needs to appraise. So it's great to come in here and say, hey, I've got this property for, I want to sell for $800,000, and an investor comes in and says, yeah, that property is worth $800,000 to me. The bank might not loan on a property if they don't think the income is there. Maybe, they have a very high vacancy rate. Maybe some of the units aren't finished. There's a lot of different things where they're going to say, well, realistically, based off of the actuals, and the banks are going to use the actuals. They're not going to use the pro forma to value the property. They're going to say, last year this building only made $10,000, but you're telling me it's worth $500?
Right.
So there's a lot of different things that you have to take into account when you look at those different calculations. But I'm going to let Vin kind of just throw in his thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, a big thing I think that's very important is understanding each number, and especially when it comes into total expenses, you want to make sure that you're really bringing in each specific thing. Okay, what am I paying for taxes every year? What am I paying, for my insurance every year? Again, things like vacancy. If the property isn't fully, occupied, you need to take into account, I'm not getting this rent money for this specific unit, and you need to understand that, because if a number's off, it throws this whole thing off.
Right, and you just reminded me of a really good point, which is each number has a story. Okay, what I mean by that is it's very important that you look and see what don't just look at, the total expenses are $15,000, the total income is $60,000. Look into this and say, well, wait a second. In this 5-unit building, they're each renting for $1,000 a month, but all the comps on these apartments have them renting for $750, $800 a month, or even $900, because 100 times 5 times 12 is $6,000, which throws this entire calculation off again. So my point being is, you don't know if the 5-unit building is being completely occupied by members of his family, and the only reason he's getting more is because they're paying him more to look good on paper. Or you don't know if, I've had instances where the expenses seemed very low. Oh, the maintenance here is only $500 a year? How can that be? Oh, well, the tenant in apartment 10 actually manages the property and we give him rent for free. Oh, but on the income statement it's saying that he's paying rent, and so there's always a story behind that you want to dive deeper and find out, okay, hey, I have a building similar size and my insurance is low, or I have a building similar size and my maintenance is 5 or 10 times the cost of what this guy's paying for maintenance. What's going on here? Because people love to try and fudge the numbers because they make such a big deal in this purchase price. Down the road, everything will be determined, especially here. It's not like buying a house where you're trying to value, the comps say this and that. There is some of that. But at the end of the day, when it comes to commercial, when it comes to investment, the numbers are the final say. They will determine what the true value is of property. So you have to keep that in mind. Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I mean, we did emphasize on the 10% cap rate. Obviously, I mean, it really isn't worth it to go any lower than that. Again, like you explained before, anything above it obviously is great. That's what you're looking for. But again, you want to make sure that the numbers are accurate, the numbers are in check, and they all check out.
And it's important to know too, 10% cap rate is it's good, but you can get much better. I've seen 15, 20, 25% cap rates in some areas, depending on the market, and each market's different. And Westchester County, New York, and into the city, you might even see no cap rate, in the sense of when it's all said and done, they have a 5 or a 6% cap rate, but what they're really purchasing the property for is they know that building or that land and that area, the real estate only goes up. Somewhere like Westchester County, a very affluent area where people will always want to be close to Manhattan, close to the city, the real estate will always go up. So there's different ways to value a property. We're simply giving you what we think is the most important key indicator, and it's kind of like an eye test, and like I said, a lot of the time you got to dig deeper for those numbers. So I'll kind of let you cut you off there. But
No, that's pretty much it, guys. Again, if you like the video, you like what you've seen, you learned something, share it, like it, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff, guys, and we'll see you next time.